17. ALIAH VESTAL and Savannah Walker. A young woman named Maya Tremillo was viciously beaten by at least 2 other girls in 2022 after being lured to a park in Clifton, Texas. ALIAH VESTAL, a woman who once considered herself Maya's best friend, allegedly asked Maya to return some shoes she'd borrowed. Maya thought it was an odd request, but came by with the footwear as promised. And as she approached ALIAH's car, a woman later identified as Savannah Walker rushed out of the vehicle and blindly attacked her. Maya tried walking away and was struck in the back of the head. As the suspects beat her, a third person filmed the fight and posted it on Snapchat. Footage of the brawl showed 2 girls pinning Maya to the ground and screaming at her. Someone found Maya in the park and took her to the hospital, where she was treated for a concussion, a sprained ankle, and multiple scratches. And in addition to her physical injuries, she was emotionally traumatized by the encounter. Maya's mother, Julie Cross, said that they'd called the police the night before to report Savannah Walker for threats and harassment, but they were told that there was nothing law enforcement could do to help because there wasn't enough evidence of a crime to act on the complaint. And surprise, surprise, the rivalry reportedly began over a boy and escalated from there. ALIAH and Savannah were charged with felony aggravated assault in retaliation, which can carry a sentence of up to 5 years if convicted. But at the moment, the current status and outcome of the case are unclear. 16. Logan Larrimore and FARREN Lane. It should be common sense that if you're going to commit a crime, you shouldn't record it and you definitely shouldn't post it online. But 2 18-year-old women named Logan Larrimore and FARREN Lane apparently missed that memo when they decided to film themselves trespassing into a Myrtle Beach water park in 2017. In a series of Snapchat posts, the pair shared video of themselves scaling a fence to get into the Myrtle Waves water park at 4 a.m. They shared clips of themselves going down water slides, eating Italian ice they didn't pay for, and otherwise enjoying their illegal visit to the park without an apparent care in the world. However, someone shared the videos with the police, who quickly caught up with the gal pals and took them into custody on third-degree burglary charges. Larrimore and Lane weren't the first people to bust themselves for trespassing because they shared evidence of it on social media. In fact, it seems to happen alarmingly often and was even the focus of a TikTok challenge, daring people to walk into complete strangers' houses without knocking. This is extremely dangerous for obvious reasons, especially in US states with gun laws that allow homeowners to shoot intruders without legal consequences. Guns or no guns, you never know how crazy someone might be or how far they're willing to go to defend their home against someone they perceive as a threat. TikTok took swift action to remove videos that appeared to show individuals participating in the challenge, but people continue to do it anyway. And it blew up on Reddit, mostly for the sake of making fun of people who were dumb enough to participate. 15. Victoria Waldrip. Better known by her social media moniker, Whoa Vicky, teenage social media influencer Victoria Waldrip didn't get famous by being likable. In fact, the 23-year-old thrives on drama and controversy. But it works for some people, especially those who aren't picky about what kind of attention they receive. Whoa Vicky became an internet celebrity in 2017 when she got into a viral beef with Danielle Bregoli, otherwise known as Bad Baby, and most infamously known as the Cash Me Outside girl who challenged Dr. Phil to a fight on national television. As the world looked on and collectively rolled their eyes, the young women exchanged vicious rap disses toward one another. Their rivalry eventually petered out, but they've both remained popular on social media ever since. While guest starring on the We in Miami podcast in 2023, Whoa Vicky stirred the pot once again by accusing rapper Lil Nas X of pretending to be gay as a publicity move to expand his fan base. She went on to say that some of her friends knew the musician in high school and that he wasn't gay back then, and that she thinks he needs Jesus. Vicky further speculated that Lil Nas X is simply doing what's in at the moment to boost his popularity. Many people were understandably offended by the influencer's remarks, but Lil Nas X didn't pay much mind to Vicky's commentary, mostly because he realized it didn't deserve his energy. The fact that she accused someone of being fake and acting out of character to gain a following is almost laughable to some, especially those who remember Whoa Vicky's bizarre controversy over her race. During the early days of her internet fame, she often presented herself as an African American woman in her posts and videos. Many people doubted that it was true, mainly because she looks white, but also because it seemed like she tried too hard to behave in ways that mimic African American stereotypes. Whoa Vicky stood by her claim, however, insisting that her ancestry results showed she was a quarter black. And at one point she shared a screenshot of the alleged results, which only added to the confusion by showing a 44% African ancestry, rather than the 25% she mentioned. It's unclear whether the image reflected her real results, but she was classified as white on an arrest report that was released after she allegedly kicked a cop at a mall in Georgia. It was also no secret that as far as Vicky's parents knew, nobody in their family had African ancestry. For many, this was enough to definitively clear up any confusion about Whoa Vicky's race. But the situation became even more bizarre when she posted a video stating that she didn't think she was black after all. More than anything, it sounds like the young woman was suffering from an identity crisis of sorts, or perhaps just doing what she does best and acting outrageous to generate reactions and views from her audience. 14. Isaiah Craig Fitzgerald. During the early days of social media, society was shocked whenever an online rivalry spilled over into real-life violence. But today, it's nothing shocking because it happens all the time. And in all honesty, the pettiness that comes along with deadly social media feuds only seems to be reaching disturbing new heights with time. In 2023, a war of words erupted between teens in rural Missouri when 18-year-old Isaiah Craig Fitzgerald reacted to a photo of 20-year-old Tanner Watkins and his girlfriend with the laughing emoji. In the comments, Watkins asked, "What was so funny?" Then the situation quickly escalated into challenges between the parties to resolve the matter by fighting. The men agreed to settle the score at a local park. Fitzgerald brought along a female friend, while Watkins showed up with 18-year-old Caleb Ramsey. 2 carloads of people also arrived to watch the violent display, one in support of each side. But instead of duking it out in an old-fashioned fistfight, guns were involved and shots were fired from both vehicles. Fitzgerald was fatally struck in the face and several other people were injured, including the young woman he went to the park with, who was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. According to court documents, police swiftly responded to the sound of gunfire, and at the scene they found multiple guns. Ramsey and Watkins were charged with murder, 3 counts of assault, 4 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, and armed criminal action. But the outcome of their cases has yet to be decided. 13. Raymond Jalissant. When an off-duty New York City corrections officer named Dion Middleton felt something unusual hit his back while outside in the Bronx one morning in 2022, he reacted by pulling his gun and fatally shooting 18-year-old Raymond Jalissant. Middleton, who was 45 years old at the time of the incident, would later claim that he genuinely believed his life was in danger. He thought he was being struck by what felt like shards of glass and saw Jalissant sitting in the passenger seat of a nearby car. He explained that he thought he saw the teen making a threatening hand gesture before rolling up the car window, at which point he made the decision to shoot. By the time the police arrived, Middleton had fled the scene, and Jalissant was soon pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Officers then tracked Middleton down at his job through surveillance footage and brought him in for questioning hours after the shooting. Inside the car Jalissant was riding in when he was shot, officers found a toy gun called a bead blaster, which was made for firing harmless gel pellets that are made from water. Being hit with the pellets might surprise someone, but it's not supposed to be painful like Middleton described, and he admitted he didn't hear gunshots before he decided to pull the trigger. News sources reported conflicting accounts of whether or not Middleton saw the toy gun in Jalissant's hands, but according to the New York Times, he admitted that he didn't see a weapon. bead blasters are children's toys, but were being used by a lot of older teens and young adults at the time due to a TikTok trend that involved challenging people to shoot the beads at strangers. Some media outlets speculated that CHALUISANT was participating in the challenge when Middleton shot him. But the young man's sister, Gerida Esquian, told the New York Daily News that her brother was participating in a water gun fight to catch a break from the heat on a 90-degree summer day. And as a result of his needless actions, Middleton was suspended from his job without pay and charged with second-degree murder, first and second-degree manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon. If convicted of the most serious charge, he could face life in prison. But to this day, he maintains that he acted in self-defense. 12. Brandon Clark. Bianca Devins and Brandon Clark met on Instagram in 2019. They were intimate at times, but Devins didn't want a serious relationship with Clark and ultimately decided that she only wanted to be friends. But Clark secretly remained hopeful that Devins would start wanting more, even though she'd been perfectly clear about her wishes. Meanwhile, Devins hoped that Clark understood that she wasn't going to change her mind. 3 months after meeting, they attended a concert together in New York City, where they met up with a mutual friend named Alex. During the drive back to Utica, where Devins and Clark both lived, they got into an argument. Clark had seen Devins kissing Alex and was in a jealous rage. And at some point during the disagreement, Clark lost all self-control and brutally assaulted Devins with a knife. He cut her neck so badly that he nearly decapitated her and posted a photo of her mutilated body on Discord. In the caption, he made a reference to a practice called orbiting, which more or less translates to following someone obsessively online, sometimes to the point of stalking. After killing the young woman, Clark built a bonfire near his vehicle and listened to a depressing song repeatedly. He then placed numerous calls to family members to say farewell, prompting them to worry and dial 911. Discord users who saw his gruesome post also contacted authorities, and Clark eventually called the police on himself. And that's when he was arrested for second-degree murder. Sadly, the online post showing Devins' murdered body generated widespread praise for Clark from the incel community. The self-identifying term, which is short for involuntarily celibate, is used by men who typically struggle to land dates and find relationships, and who deeply hate women, especially those who they perceive as out of their league. Armed with an extreme and unwarranted sense of entitlement, this extreme version of toxic masculinity promotes the belief that women deserve to be punished for not giving an incel what he feels is owed, regardless of whether she wants it or not. Devins' family has had to fight continuously to get the horrifying images removed from websites and social media, forcing them to relive the trauma of her murder over and over, while misogynistic trolls ensure that the photos continue to circulate. Their experience sparked campaigns for Bianca's Law, which would require large social media platforms to take more responsibility for removing violent content from their site. And in 2022, New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a version of the law that criminalizes posting, sharing, or publishing personal images with the intent to degrade or abuse someone under certain circumstances. After initially pleading not guilty, Brandon Clark changed his plea to guilty. He then tried to withdraw the guilty plea, but was denied since he'd already admitted to the crime. And in the end, the court sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison. 11. Chandler Halderson. Bart and Krista Halderson enjoyed a typical upper-middle-class lifestyle in small-town America. They owned a nice house in Windsor, Wisconsin, and had 2 adult sons who seemed to be on the path to success. The couple didn't achieve their stable existence by being unreliable, so it was highly unusual when Krista failed to show up at her job one day in 2021 without explanation. And after failing to reach her by phone, a co-worker stopped by the family's residence to check on her. The Haldersons' youngest son, 23-year-old Chandler, told the concerned colleague that his parents had gone to their cabin that was 3 hours away for the 4th of July weekend. But 3 days later, Bart and Krista were still nowhere to be found. In a missing person report filed with the Dane County Sheriff's Department, Chandler claimed that his parents had been picked up and taken to the cabin by a couple he didn't recognize. But when law enforcement visited the cabin, it was immediately clear that nobody had been there for a very long time. Chandler was then brought in for additional questioning. Unaware that investigators had checked out the property, he claimed that his mom and dad went to the cabin to fix a plumbing emergency and that he helped pack tools they needed before they left. During the interview, deputies informed detectives that they had found mutilated human remains on a property where Chandler had been seen wandering prior to reporting his parents missing. And that's when Chandler realized that the deck was starting to stack against him. So he ended the interview and asked for a lawyer. The remains were identified as Bart Halderson, and Chandler was charged with murder while authorities continued to search for Krista. Help came unexpectedly in the form of a tip from Chandler's girlfriend Catherine Melander, who'd recently been tracking his location on Snapchat. She'd noticed that he was in a remote area along the Wisconsin River and screenshotted it. And sure enough, Krista's remains were found at the site, and Chandler was hit with another murder charge. During a search of the Haldersons' home, police also found the gun they believe was used to commit the murders, along with more than 200 bone fragments in the fireplace and evidence of blood that had been cleaned up. Prosecutors accused the young man of killing his parents because they found out that he'd flunked out of college. Chandler had gone to great lengths to convince his folks that he was still attending classes. He even sent them fake emails to make it look like he was still enrolled. He'd also lied about joining a police scuba diving team and other job prospects. During his trial, Assistant District Attorney Andrea Raymond described how Chandler enjoyed a privileged upbringing, which made it especially difficult to make sense of his actions. He also showed little to no emotion throughout the proceedings. After deliberating for just 2 hours, the jury found Chandler guilty of killing his parents. He was sentenced to life without parole, but said that he planned to appeal his conviction. During the hearing, he asked for any attorneys who were interested in taking his case to reach out. He also said that it's not that I do not have feelings, it's that I was warned to not show them in the scrutiny of this case. 10 deadly social media dares. Scores of young people have hurt themselves and even accidentally caused their own deaths in recent years while performing dangerous social media challenges. One of the latest ways people have needlessly put their lives on the line in a bid for online fame came in the form of the Malaikat Mount or Angel of Death challenge. The trend, which involved jumping in front of moving trucks in the hope that the driver would be able to brake without hitting the person, went viral in Indonesia in 2022. It doesn't take a big imagination to figure out how this went horribly wrong. In the city of Tangerang, 2 18-year-old women were mowed down by a truck that couldn't avoid hitting them, and they both died from fatal head injuries. Police then caught and detained at least 14 more people that day for attempting the stunt. Just 2 days earlier, in the city of Bandung, a truck hit one of 2 teenage boys who jumped out in front of it. But by the grace of God, the young man survived with serious injuries, including a fractured skull and shattered teeth. While this was the first time the trend was mentioned in many news sources, it first appeared on social media at least a year earlier. In one of the early tragedies that came with the challenge, a truck plowed into a group of 8 people in 2021, striking 3 of them. 1 teenager died, while the other 2 were seriously injured. These are just a few examples of the many bad outcomes resulting from clout chasers doing dangerous things to boost their popularity on social media. And these stunts are often successful at achieving viral status, making it difficult to talk young people out of taking potentially fatal risks. Just weeks before the Angel of Death challenge made international news in 2022, the death of an 18-year-old Florida man named Timothy Isaiah Hall, better known as Timbo the Redneck, died while filming a video for social media. With more than 200,000 followers, Hall had already achieved influencer status when he crashed his truck while doing donuts in a friend's front yard for a TikTok video. Hall lost control of the truck in the middle of doing burnouts, causing the vehicle to flip and throwing him out of the vehicle. He landed on the ground and the truck landed on top of him, ultimately crushing him to death. There's no denying that Hall's dangerous driving helped to attract the kind of fame many people hope to achieve, but he paid for it with his life. 9. Screen-addicted teen slaughters dad. 51-year-old Anuad Chaubangdwe was at his wit's end when he asked his son Pamurat to take a break from playing video games one day in 2019. Ever since the teen was kicked out of school due to his chronic absences, he did nothing but sleep all day and spent every waking moment playing video games at the family's home in southern Thailand. But his lifestyle quickly became a major source of conflict for the household. Within moments of his father's request to put the controller down, Pamurat grabbed a knife and stabbed Anuat in the back, and afterwards he fled the scene on his bicycle. Responding officers arrived at the home in Surat Thani to find the victim, a retired police sergeant, on the floor in a pool of blood. A trail of blood from the yard to the kitchen showed that the victim spent his final moments crawling inside in a desperate attempt to get help. Police tracked Pamurat down at a restaurant, where they found him playing video games with a friend, and took him into custody on suspicion of murder. According to relatives, the young man's obsession caused him to skip school for days at a time, and getting expelled and having even more free time on his hands apparently only made the situation worse. Sadly, his unwillingness to step away from the TV screen for even just a few minutes and his impulsive anger toward his dad landed him in a place where basic comforts are scarce and video games are definitely not allowed. 8. Kiara McCulley. In a horrifying act of violence that was equal parts bizarre and cruel, someone killed and tried to decapitate a 21-year-old woman named Grace Jennings at her home in Santa Fe, New Mexico in October 2022. Responding officers visited the residence in response to a call about a possible homicide and found Jennings' mutilated remains in a detached garage. And laying near her body was a bloody 3-foot-long sword. According to a criminal complaint, 25-year-old Isaac Apodancia made the 911 call after he told his mother that he saw his girlfriend killing a woman. And when officers arrived, they saw 19-year-old Kiara McCulley running inside the house and slamming the door shut behind her. Apodancia and McCulley were taken in for questioning and revealed that they'd shared a bed with the victim the night before. They also both claimed to have been romantically involved with Jennings in the past. McCulley told police that she got upset with Jennings for failing to intervene while she was assaulted by several men. She also said she saw Jennings collecting money during the incident. The Santa Fe Police Department confirmed to local media that an assault report was filed in 2020, but that the details it contained were vastly different from the story McCulley told after Jennings' murder. At one point during the interview, she mentioned having mental health issues and claimed not to remember what had happened. But she also allegedly said that she was partially hopeful that Jennings was dead and admitted to fantasizing about killing the victim on multiple occasions, which only furthered law enforcement's growing suspicion of her involvement. Meanwhile, in another interrogation room, Apodancia flatly denied any involvement in Jennings' death. Instead, he pointed the finger exclusively at McCulley, claiming that she'd been planning to kill the victim for 2 years. A search of his text messages strongly indicated that he was both aware of and involved in the plot to kill Jennings. It even appeared as though Apodancia pressured McCulley to follow through with the murder. Both suspects were charged with first-degree murder in connection with the case. However, McCulley was initially found incompetent to stand trial, but after undergoing several months of mental health treatment, she was declared competent. And at the moment, her case is slated to go to trial sometime in August of 2023, with Apodancia to be tried separately at a later date. 7. MYSHAWN Stanley. 21-year-old ALIAH Stanley and her brother, 22-year-old MYSHAWN, were hardly the first pair of siblings to fight over the family television. They were hanging out at a relative's home in Cleveland, Ohio one day in 2023 when they began arguing because ALIAH wanted to watch a show and MYSHAWN wanted to play Fortnite. What started out as a seemingly ordinary spat between siblings ended with ALIAH being shot more than 6 times. She was still alive when officers arrived at the scene, but sadly she died soon after. The siblings' aunt, Tasha Lett, told local station WCPO that MYSHAWN has violent and aggressive tendencies and that he jumped on his sister and began wrestling with her during the disagreement. Lett said that ALIAH initially got away from MYSHAWN and was heading upstairs to get away from him, but she was unaware that he had a gun and she was shot from behind. After shooting ALIAH once, MYSHAWN allegedly fired 6 more bullets into her body before fleeing the house. Other relatives echoed the aunt's sentiments about MYSHAWN having severe anger issues and said that he suffers from bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. They weren't surprised that he was capable of hurting someone, but they were shocked and devastated that his sister ended up being that person. A SWAT team arrested MYSHAWN on suspicion of murder the day after the shooting, and at the moment he's being held on a $500,000 bond while he awaits his next court date. 6. A lethal thrill. Bored young people are sometimes known to pass the time in strange, destructive, and even deadly ways. And this was certainly the case for a trio of 18-year-olds from Colorado who killed an innocent driver during their reckless pursuit for a thrill. 20-year-old Alexa Bartel was talking to a friend on the phone while driving in Jefferson County one night in April 2023 when suddenly the call disconnected. Concerned for her safety, the friend shrank to Alexa's location and drove to the scene. She found the young woman's vehicle crashed in a field with the windshield shattered and Alexa motionless behind the wheel with a fatal head injury. Law enforcement concluded that a large landscaping boulder had been deliberately thrown at her car and that it was the rock and not the impact of the car crash that killed the victim. The tragedy came following a string of similar incidents that happened throughout the night, leaving 7 cars damaged and 2 drivers with minor injuries. Further investigation revealed that rocks had been thrown at cars in the area on multiple previous occasions over a 2-month period leading up to Alexa's death. Using a technique called geofencing, detectives used cell phone data to look for phone numbers that showed a pattern of being in close proximity to the rock-throwing incidents. And based on their findings and tips from the public, they identified the suspects as Nicholas Mitch Carroll Chick, Joseph Koenig, and Zachary Quack. One tipster, who said that he'd been hanging out with the group earlier that night, said that Joseph Koenig frequently participates in destructive behavior and likes causing chaos. He told sheriff's deputies that he asked to be taken home when he saw his friends loading the bed of Koenig's truck with rocks from a Walmart parking lot because he just knew that something bad was going to happen. Koenig failed to talk with law enforcement after his arrest, but Carol Chick reportedly admitted to participating in similar behavior on at least 10 occasions. According to police, he said that all 3 of the suspects got excited when they hit cars. However, he and Quack gave conflicting stories about who threw the rock that killed Alexa. But after striking Alex's car, Quack snapped a photo of her vehicle as a memento. The young men each faced charges of first-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, second-degree assault, and attempted second-degree assault. But we'll have to wait and see what sentence they receive. 5. Jose DIAZ-CONTRENAS. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in May 2023, Baltimore County Police responded to a reported shooting at a Motel 6 in Catonsville, Maryland. Guests would later tell local station WBAL-TV that they awoke to the sound of multiple gunshots. One witness went into the hallway to investigate and was startled to find 2 victims on the floor. 30-year-old Javier Argueta died at the scene, and 2 other victims aged 19 and 25 were taken to the hospital with none life-threatening injuries. Investigators initially declined to specify what they believe led up to the shooting, but they reassured the public that it was most likely an isolated incident and didn't appear to be a random act. According to charging documents obtained by WBAL, responding officers found 18-year-old Jose DIAZ-CONTRENAS wandering around in the motel parking lot. Surveillance footage appeared to show the young man pulling a handgun from beneath his coat and firing several rounds. DIAZ-CONTRENAS allegedly admitted to committing the shooting during questioning, telling investigators that he couldn't stop. He was booked on charges of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, and is being held without bail as he awaits his next court date in June 2023. And, unfortunately, authorities are still working to establish a motive for the senseless crime. 4. Cameron Robbins. After graduating from high school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2023, 18-year-old Cameron Robbins celebrated by traveling to the Bahamas with his classmates. During a sunset cruise, the star baseball player took his peers up on a dare to jump off the ship. Bystander footage showed someone throwing the young man a life preserver while his peers shouted at him to grab on. However, he seemed distracted by a shadowy shape in the water and appeared to be trying to swim away from it when he suddenly vanished beneath the surface. It was dark and the footage is blurry, but many people who have watched it believe it shows Robbins trying to escape from a shark. And this wouldn't be surprising, since the waters where he jumped in are known to be heavily shark-infested. The boat's crew members looked for Robbins but couldn't find him, so they called for help. Multiple agencies then participated in a search for the teen, including the US Coast Guard. But not a single trace of him turned up, and the effort was called off after a few days. Robbins was presumed dead, and authorities extended their condolences to his family. And without a body, the nature of his death remains unclear. It's hard to explain what possesses people to do things that are obviously dangerous in response to a dare or challenge, but in hindsight, many, if not most people, have done at least one or two things that seem incredibly reckless. 3. Madeline Davis. 21-year-old Madeline Davis wanted to see the world while she was still young. So, after visiting Thailand and Bali in 2019, the British beautician headed to Australia. She was having the time of her life with a group of friends when tragedy struck at the most unexpected moment. After pulling an all-nighter at a house party, Madeline and several others went to watch the sunrise over Diamond Bay in Sydney. Everyone got so caught up in taking photos that they somehow failed to notice when the young woman fell off a 262-foot-high cliff. When they finally realized Madeline was missing, they contacted authorities, who found her body wedged in a rock shelf 55 feet underwater. An autopsy revealed that her blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit for driving. She also had amphetamines, cocaine, ketamine, and MDMA in her system. Everyone in the group was heavily intoxicated, which explains why it took them so long to realize that Madeline was no longer with them. The coroner concluded that her death was the result of a tragic accident and that nobody else was at fault for it. And according to an official report, she climbed over a fence into an unauthorized area before she fell. Madeline wasn't the first person to suffer a horrific accident at the site, which is popular among tourists for its scenic beauty. Over the years, the fences and danger signs have gotten taller and bigger in hopes that more people will heed their caution. But visitors continue to ignore the warnings and, unfortunately, pay for it with their lives. 2. Katrina Lee. In a bizarre display that she later described as Gen Z humor, 20-year-old Katrina Lee allegedly threatened to shoot up a mental hospital in Green Bay, Wisconsin in January 2023. Employees at the hospital got police involved after someone alerted them to the threats, which appeared online and on Snapchat. According to police, Lee knew a patient at the facility. A screenshot of one of the alleged threats stated that there'd no longer be a hospital soon because she was about to shoot it up. The person who wrote the statement said that they'd failed to get in touch with the patient after calling multiple times and that the hospital had been pissing them off all morning. At the time the threats were made, police were unsure of whether the suspect had access to any weapons, so they tracked the post to Lee's address and paid her a visit. Lee reportedly admitted to making the threats, but said that she had no plans to act on her words. She further explained that she was at her wits' end with the hospital's poor communication and the inferior quality of the food and doctors there. During the conversation with law enforcement, Lee reiterated that she wasn't going to act on her threats and that it was just Gen Z humor, but she was nevertheless booked on one count of misdemeanor disorderly conduct and one felony count of making terroristic threats. If convicted of the felony charge, she could face up to 3.5 years in prison, while the disorderly conduct charge carries a sentence of up to 90 days in jail. 1. Alexander Barrow. nobody knows why 23-year-old Alexander Frank Barrow drove 1,700 miles to kill a young gamer he didn't personally know in 2020. He'd met 18-year-old Matthew Thane online, but no logical reason to travel from the greater San Francisco area to the Dallas-Fort Worth suburb of Flower Mound. There was also no obvious motive for Barrow to lure the avid Call of Duty player outside and shoot him. According to police, a helmet-clad Barrow approached the property with a propane tank at around 6 a.m. and lit it on fire. He waited for Thane to exit the house, fatally shot the young man, then got back into his vehicle and drove straight back to California. And in less than 72 hours after leaving for Texas, he was back home. When Barrow didn't answer the door for law enforcement when they showed up at his residence with a search warrant, police broke into his apartment and found him dead. Lacking any other explanation for the bizarre tragedy, investigators concluded that the incident may have stemmed from a video game-related disagreement. Would you rather be stuck on a long-distance bus ride with baby boomers who constantly criticize the younger generations? Or would you prefer to be the old grump among members of a younger generation that you find annoying? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.